The sweltering Orlando summer of 1991 clung to everything, a thick, humid blanket that made even breathing feel like an effort. 12-year-old Alex Miller, however, thrived in it. His skin was perpetually sun-kissed, his sandy brown hair bleached fairer by the sun, and his eyes, a startling blue, perpetually sparkled with the boundless energy of youth. He was a quintessential Florida boy, obsessed with Little League baseball, spending endless hours at the park on East Washington Street, perfecting his swing, dreaming of one day playing for the Braves. His room, a vibrant explosion of sports posters and comic books, was his sanctuary in the quaint, tree-lined neighborhood just south of Lake Eala. His mother, Sarah, a petite woman with a fierce maternal protectiveness, often worried about his adventurous spirit, especially on days like the 4th of July. David, his father, a man of quiet strength who worked long hours at an accounting firm downtown, tried to balance Sarah's anxieties with Alex's need for freedom. Their lives were simple, predictable, and deeply rooted in the Orlando community. Sundays were for church, Saturdays for family errands, and evenings often saw them gathered around the television, watching reruns of Cheers or a Magic game. Alex's greatest concern was whether his new baseball glove would be broken in enough for the upcoming season. He was innocent, full of life, and utterly unaware of the darkness that could lurk just beyond the edges of his well-ordered world. The 4th of July, 1991, was a day etched in the collective memory of Orlando for its oppressive heat and the spectacular fireworks display planned over Lake Eala. For Alex, it was the pinnacle of summer. His friends Billy and Mark lived just 2 blocks away, and their plan was to meet by the oak tree at the corner of their street, then walk together to the park. From there, they'd find a good spot to watch the fireworks, maybe even sneak a few of the small firecrackers Billy's older brother had managed to acquire. Sarah had given him strict instructions: be back by 10, Alex. And stay with Billy and Mark, no wandering off. Alex, impatient, had nodded, already halfway out the door, the screen door slamming shut with a familiar thud that now echoed like a death knell in his parents' minds. He was wearing his favorite red t-shirt, faded blue jean shorts, and scuffed sneakers. A baseball cap turned backward completed his uniform. His excited shouts of "Bye, Mom," "Bye, Dad" were the last words they ever heard him speak. The first hint of unease crept in around 9:45 p.m. Sarah, standing on the porch, could hear the distant pops and booms of the fireworks, the faint echoes of the crowd's delighted gasps. Billy and Mark were usually punctual. 10 o'clock came and went, then 10:15. Sarah's stomach began to twist into knots. She called Billy's house. Mrs. Harrison, Billy's mother, sounded apologetic. "Oh, Alex left with the boys around 9:30, Sarah. Said he wanted to head home and beat the traffic." A cold dread began to seep into Sarah's bones. Alex had left, alone. He never did that. David, who had been engrossed in a late-night report, picked up on his wife's escalating panic. "He's probably just talking to someone, honey. Give him 5 more minutes." But 5 minutes turned into 10, then 20. By 11 p.m., the fireworks had ceased, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the distant wail of emergency sirens, common on such a busy night. Alex was still not home. Sarah's voice, when she called the Orlando Police Department, was thin, reedy, barely audible above her own ragged breaths. The dispatcher, accustomed to calls about lost children on holidays, took the information with practiced calm, advising them to check with neighbors, to scour the immediate vicinity. It wasn't a full-blown emergency yet, just a missing child. Sarah and David, their flashlights cutting through the humid night air, started walking the route Alex would have taken. They called out his name, their voices growing hoarser, more desperate with each unanswered cry. The silence that met them was suffocating. The initial investigation began with a frantic search of the neighborhood. Patrol cars, their blue and red lights flashing silently against the darkened houses, became a grim tableau. Neighbors, roused from their sleep, emerged in various states of disarray, offering what little they knew. No one had seen Alex leave alone. Everyone remembered him with Billy and Mark. The boys, when questioned, were distraught. They insisted Alex had left them around 9:30 p.m., saying he was tired and wanted to get home before the big rush. They tried to convince him to stay, but Alex had been resolute. He'd waved goodbye and vanished into the throng of people dispersing from the park. Detective Ray Reynolds, a seasoned OPD officer with a weary gaze and a meticulously kept mustache, took the lead. He knew the 4th of July crowds were a nightmare for witnesses. Too many faces, too much noise, too much distraction. The following days were a blur of activity and agonizing hope. Flyers bearing Alex's smiling face blanketed Orlando, stapled to lampposts, taped to storefront windows, handed out by volunteers. Sarah and David gave tearful press conferences, their pleas for help echoing across local news channels. The FBI was brought in, their resources vast, their experience with child abductions chillingly extensive. Every tip, no matter how outlandish, was followed up. There were sightings, a boy matching Alex's description at a gas station in Kissimmee, another by the beach in Daytona, even one in Atlanta. Each light, each flicker of hope, ultimately extinguished, leaving behind only deeper despair. The police mapped out the area Alex would have walked. They interviewed every vendor at the park, every family who had been in the vicinity. They drained retention ponds, scoured the dense Florida scrubland that bordered some of the residential areas, and even sent divers into Lake Eala. Canine units tracked scents that quickly faded in the oppressive heat and rain. The consensus was grim. Alex had likely been abducted. There were no signs of struggle, no discarded clothing, no witnesses to a specific incident. He had simply melted into the holiday crowd, a ghost in plain sight. The emotional toll on the Millers was catastrophic. Sarah became a ghost herself, her once vibrant personality replaced by a hollow-eyed obsession. Every phone call, every knock at the door, sent her heart racing with a terrible mixture of hope and dread. David, trying to hold it together for his wife, felt the weight of unspoken blame. Their marriage, once strong, began to fray under the relentless pressure of grief and uncertainty. They argued over everything: how to keep Alex's memory alive without erasing him from their present, how much hope was too much, how little was too little. Their home, once filled with Alex's laughter and the clatter of baseballs, became a shrine of silence, punctuated only by Sarah's quiet sobs or David's heavy sighs. Years crawled by, the flyers faded, then were replaced by newer, laminated ones. Alex's face, once a fresh, innocent image, became an emblem of enduring mystery. Detective Reynolds, despite his best efforts, had to move on to other cases, Alex's file growing thicker but colder on the shelf. Every July 4th was a fresh wound, a brutal anniversary of their greatest loss. The community tried to offer comfort, but what comfort could there be for a wound that refused to heal? The Millers divorced in 1998, unable to bear the shared silence, the constant reminder of their failure to protect their son. Sarah moved to a smaller apartment, filling it with Alex's old toys and photographs, never truly moving on. David stayed in the house, a monument to a life that had fractured beyond repair, a silent testament to a missing boy. 12 years later, it was 2003. The world had changed. Cell phones were common, the internet a daily utility, DNA forensics had made quantum leaps. In the Orlando Police Department, a young, ambitious detective named Alina Rodriguez was assigned to the cold case unit. She had a reputation for dogged persistence and a knack for spotting overlooked details. One of the first files she pulled was Alex Miller's. The sheer volume of paper, the yellowed reports, the faded Polaroids of a hopeful 12-year-old boy filled 3 large boxes. It was a case that haunted the department, a ghost of their collective failure. Rodriguez spent weeks immersed in the file, reading every word, tracing every interview, re-examining every piece of evidence. The initial investigation had been thorough for its time, but technology had progressed. She focused on the periphery, the less obvious leads that had been dismissed. One small detail snagged her attention. A witness statement from an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, who lived just a few doors down from Alex. In her initial interview, given just hours after Alex was reported missing, she had mentioned seeing a quiet man who lived across the street, a Mr. Peter Thorne, puttering in his garden around 9 p.m. on the 4th of July. Mrs. Henderson remembered him because he was usually reclusive, and it was unusual for him to be out so late. The original detective had noted it down but dismissed it, as Thorne was a well-known, albeit solitary, resident, and his presence was deemed unremarkable. He told officers he'd simply been watering his prize-winning roses before the fireworks, and then had gone inside to watch the show on TV. Rodriguez, however, found herself circling back to Thorne. She pulled his file. Peter Thorne, 62 in 1991, lived alone. No criminal record, no history of violence, a retired librarian, known for his meticulous garden. But his alibi watching fireworks on TV was thin. Many people would have chosen to watch the spectacular display over Lake Eala. Why specifically stay home? This minor inconsistency, combined with Mrs. Henderson's perception of his unusual presence outside, pricked Rodriguez's investigative intuition. She dug deeper into Thorne's background, cross-referencing old property records. What she found sent a chill down her spine. Peter Thorne owned a small, undeveloped parcel of land, a secluded, overgrown 5-acre lot deep in the woods of East Orange County, acquired in the late 1980s. It was off the beaten path, barely accessible by dirt track, and had never been mentioned in his initial interviews. When asked about property, Thorne had only spoken of his suburban home. This omission, coupled with his reclusive nature and proximity to Alex's path, struck Rodriguez as more than just a coincidence. She decided to pay Thorne a visit. He was now 74, still living in the same house, still meticulous in his garden, though a little frailer. He remembered Alex Miller, of course. Everyone in the neighborhood did. He was polite, almost overly so, answering her questions with a practiced ease that felt rehearsed. When Rodriguez casually brought up the East Orange County property, Thorne's composure wavered, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He claimed it was an old investment, never developed, a place he hadn't visited in years. Rodriguez knew she had something. She secured a warrant for Thorne's East Orange County property, citing the undisclosed property and his proximity to the disappearance as probable cause. On a humid August morning, a team of forensic investigators and detectives, including Rodriguez, descended upon the overgrown land. It was dense, thick with palmetto and pine, a perfect place for secrets to be buried. After hours of painstaking search, aided by ground-penetrating radar, a small, crudely dug grave was discovered beneath a stand of ancient live oaks, shrouded in Spanish moss. The discovery was agonizingly slow, reverent. What they unearthed, carefully documented and photographed, were the remains of a small boy, along with fragments of faded red fabric and a small, worn baseball cap turned backward. The cap specifically sealed it. It was Alex Miller's. Dental records and mitochondrial DNA testing confirmed it definitively. Alex had not simply vanished. He had been taken, murdered, and buried in secret, just a few miles from the vibrant city where he had once played, his innocent life brutally extinguished. The arrest of Peter Thorne was swift. Faced with the undeniable evidence from his property, the fragments of Alex's clothing and the remains, Thorne broke. He confessed, his voice a monotone whisper of malice and regret. He had seen Alex walking alone that night, separated from his friends, cutting through a quieter part of the park. An opportunity, he had called it, a moment of impulse. He had lured Alex into his car with a promise of seeing a better view of the fireworks from a secret spot, then driven him to his secluded property. The details of the abduction and the subsequent murder were unspeakable, painting a picture of cold, calculated evil hidden behind a facade of harmless reclusiveness. The meticulous gardener, the quiet librarian, had been a predator all along. The news hit Orlando like a thunderclap. For 12 years, the community had held onto a sliver of hope, a belief that Alex might still be out there somewhere. Now that hope was shattered, replaced by a cold, hard truth. Sarah Miller, contacted by Detective Rodriguez, collapsed when she heard the words. Closure, they called it. But there was no closure in the gut-wrenching realization of her son's fate, only a different kind of pain. David, his face etched with decades of sorrow, stood by Sarah, their shared grief, for the first time in years, uniting them, even if only in despair. Peter Thorne was convicted of Alex Miller's murder in 2004, sentenced to life in prison without parole. Justice in its slow, grinding way had finally arrived, but it couldn't bring Alex back. His memory, once a bright beacon, was now intertwined with the dark shadow of his disappearance, a haunting reminder of the fragility of innocence and the enduring grief of a community forever marked by a boy who vanished on the 4th of July. The oak tree where Alex was supposed to meet his friends still stood, tall and silent, a sentinel to a lost childhood, a quiet testament to a pain that time could never truly erase. The vibrant energy of Orlando continued, but for the Millers and for all who remembered Alex, the humid summer air would always carry a whisper of loss, a chilling echo of that fateful night in 1991, when a child's laughter was silenced and a family's world irrevocably shattered. The case became a somber reminder for law enforcement, a testament to the fact that even the smallest, most seemingly insignificant detail could hold the key to unlocking a decade-old mystery. Detective Rodriguez, while lauded for her work, carried the weight of the Miller family's sorrow, a burden that came with digging up such devastating truths. She often thought of Alex, that bright-eyed, baseball-loving boy, and the countless what-ifs that swirled around his tragic fate. What if Mrs. Henderson's observation had been taken more seriously in 1991? What if Thorne's property had been discovered sooner? The answers offered no solace, only the grim reality that some monsters blend seamlessly into the everyday fabric of life, waiting for their moment. The scars left on Orlando were deep, a permanent blemish on the city's sunny disposition, a constant, unspoken memorial to the boy who never came home, and the long, agonizing journey to uncover his ultimate, heartbreaking truth. The fireworks still blazed over Lake Eala every year, but for those who knew Alex, their brilliance was forever tinged with shadow, a beautiful light against a backdrop of enduring sorrow. Character count: 21,795.